Ohio State wins 44-31 here at Penn State's Beaver Stadium, largely on the backs of a career-making performance from JT Tuimoloau, just touchdowns Tuimoloau, as I like to call him now.
Just touchdowns. We have worked out his name for months. Is it JT? Is it JT? And it was just touchdowns all along. You've solved it.
Yeah. He doesn't like JTT, but I think he'd be fine with JTD. Just touchdowns. It wasn't just touchdowns, but it was a big one there at the end. But tipped the ball for one interception. Picked one off himself in coverage. Jumped a route. Takes home a pick six at the end of the game. It's kind of the exclamation point. Strip sack.
JTO, just turnovers.
Yeah. Just turnover. There you go. Yeah, just impressive. Just a pretty awesome game. And, Stephen, you talked to him after the game, and Ryan Day said after the game that he thought JT Tuimoloau might have been pressing a little bit because we said like weeks ago, like we could see it on the field, like he's so close. Like, he's getting in the backfield. I would go even back to like the Toledo game. Like he was one of the guys that like had his hands on DeQuan Finn multiple times and just couldn't quite get there. Gets a sack against Iowa, and maybe that helped. He didn't say this. I don't know if he said it to you. I'm just theorizing. Like, does it take a little bit of the pressure off, and now you get to play with the abandon that a lot of these guys on defense have been playing with, creating turnovers and stuff, and you get the kind of performance we have today?
Yeah, Larry Johnson keeps finding these really awesome defensive linemen who are also very humble, so it's frustrating to talk to them when they do stuff like this. But I did ask him which one was his favorite, and he said it was the tip pass that ended up being a Zach Harrison interception. So, I mean, Zach Harrison got the benefit from something he'd been doing the last couple of weeks as well. But I think the big thing from this game was it's very reminiscent of 2018 Chase Young. You know, Chase Young, five-star recruit who had been coming along year two. He's starting, but it's like that's the Nick Bosa show, and then Nick Bosa gets hurt. This Penn State game in this exact stadium was his coming out party. And from that point on, we saw what he went on to be. 16.5 sacks in 2019, Heisman Trophy finalist, and number 2 pick in the NFL draft. It seems like that's where we're at with JT. I'm not saying he's going to have all those accomplishments, but maybe he will. Who knows? But the point of the matter is, up until this point, it had been, I get pressure, but I don't get home. He was actually leading this team in pressures. But that's been the problem with this Ohio State defensive line in the last couple of years is I get pressure, I don't get home. Well, today he got home multiple times, whether it was literally getting home to get to the quarterback or literally getting home to get into the end zone. And so just like with Chase Young in 2018, if that was the launching pad for what was Chase Young's career, it seems like the same is on the table for JT Tuimoloau in 2022 as a five-star sophomore coming into his own who is also a starter.
We've been waiting 3 seasons to speak another Ohio State defensive end's name in the same breath as Chase Young, legitimately. Doug, you've seen a lot of great defensive line performances here over your 50, 60 years covering Ohio State back into the leather helmet days or whatever it was. Does this rank up there with those great performances you've seen before from Chase Young and the Bosas and their predecessors?
I mean, it's just such a unique performance because normally when you talk about an edge guy dominating a game, it's beating the tackles and getting in the backfield. And this was like JT in coverage half the time and just doing things you don't normally see guys like that do. There was one national writer here who came in and was like, was that like the best defensive performance I've ever seen? He caused 4 turnovers all by himself. And it's hard to do that. We had, I think, all picked maybe him to be an All-American this year. Halfway through the season, it felt like that had no chance of happening. There's a lot of All-American voters that just watched that. Fox noon game. That was a dominating performance, and that I think I agree with Stephen. Like what the rest of this season could be, and then what 2023 could be. It feels like we just opened the door on that. What that might look like. And I've always kind of compared him to Cam Hayward as a little more physical defensive end. But like no offense to Cam Hayward, like he couldn't do that. He couldn't drop in coverage and be as nimble. That was great athleticism from a guy I think who's technically sound, who's humble, who is physical. But, man, he's playing like a cornerback today in a lot of ways.
Yeah. It was just an eye-opening performance for a lot of people. Somewhat for us, but certainly, as you're saying, Doug, I think for a lot of people out there who are just watching maybe Ohio State for the first time, just saw that this was a big noon game. And
he's going to be the National Defensive Player of the Week. Yeah. I don't even know who. Yeah.
I don't know what else you would have to do to do this. This is like one of the biggest games of the week regardless, and then what he did inside of it. Yeah, and I don't know if this alone would be enough for something like All-American to push him there this year, but it's the kind of performance that makes you a known commodity for next year. Like you are on the board for next year when people start talking about the best players in college football going into next year. And there's no reason to think the way he's been trending that this sort of thing can't continue probably in the second half of the season. A lot more about this on the Buckeye Talk podcast, wherever you can find podcasts, and get the text 614-350-3315. It's where we're shooting news updates, analysis, everything else all week long from Buckeye Talk.